Open your Bibles to Genesis. Great section of Scripture. I hope we have some fun with this. I was doing a wedding yesterday. It was quite an affair with a whole bunch of different kinds of people. I was thinking about you, Zach. This would have been a Zach Johnson crowd. Not only was I dealing with a congregation of Christians and Jewish, people gathered together. There was also a good smattering of stand-up comedians in the crowd. And I was told after the service that I've got 3 really good laughs. And they said, in a 15, 20-minute spot like that, that's not bad. So I just want to show you, I want to give you, we can keep the lights down just a bit, because I want to show you something. Just kind of study this for a moment. Check out that body language. Kind of, it's interesting. You're not quite sure. He's kind of got those slitty eyes. Does he really mean it? She's heard it all time and time again. And so let me offer you, in the next slide, this is the commentary. With no time left on the clock, the season on the line, Dan unloads the Hail Mary for the win. Unbelievable. I don't know if you've had this experience at home or you've seen that. I'm kind of thinking, as I approach the subject of marriage, what was God thinking? Marriage. This is fraught with all kinds of stuff, and as we try to put this intimate relationship, these pieces together, it gets rather complicated, to say the least. But there is hope as we give ourselves to these ancient texts. There is really hope. There is much that I believe is overlooked in chapter 1 and 2 of Genesis that we're going to take some time and scope out. I know we want to take time for communion this morning, and that'll be part of the invitation. But I just encourage you maybe to get your thinking caps on just a little tighter than maybe usual. This is not a light subject. It's a subject that really necessitates you kind of, wow, is that really in there? So the Bible on your lap, maybe a pencil, maybe even taking notes for the first time. If nothing else, it could impress the person sitting next to you. That could be important for this afternoon and the week to come. So what was God thinking? Let's find out. We're going to look at 3 aspects of the human condition this morning. And the first is our created image. We were all created in an image. And let me just go back to Genesis 1:26. Then God said, let us. You can't go beyond that. God is speaking of God's self in the plural. So you might just want to circle the word us. Let us make man, again, in our image. That's interesting language. So us and our, make sure you circle that. That's the first place where we got to stop the bus and get off this morning. But there's more here. In our likeness, there it is again. Let them rule over the fish. To see, you get all of that. Then you get down to verse 27. So God created man, that would be human. God created humanity in His, interesting choice of words there, in His image. In the image of God, He created him or them. And then male and female, He created them. Wow. I just don't know if you thought about this. I've had sleepless nights all week thinking about where is this taking us? What does this mean? It means that male and females are the two faces of God. Regardless of what our culture says, regardless of what our church culture says, there is some stuff here that we need to deal with. And the first part of the stuff, or the stuffage, is this us and our. Why does God, in the opening volley of the text, these holy, sacred, in the Torah, does God start off with us? Usness in God. God so unexplainable that what is here, the plural of majesty is used. Often a king or a prince or a queen that would walk into the room would be stated as more than just one person because there's so much. And so you have this usness about God. And then as if to answer our question, had we ever thought to ask the question, God gives us the usness in the mirror of our own reflection. The usness of God, the image of God, is male and female. It can't be contained. Now, the first thing I want to do is say, God, why did you do this? Why is this? And just to get us started this morning, it's important that we continue to know that God is always more than we think God is. Okay? God is always, we sing a song, He's still more awesome than I know. I love when I hear myself singing that line, and I know God still, we want to know God, but we kind of want to know God. Like we want to know how to put God in a box and know everything about God so that we can, and God is so unknowable in that sense, but not unbelievable. See? This creates from the get-go an amazing faith that we must have in this God that cannot be completely explained. And our generation is no less like every generation that has walked the face of the earth, beginning with Adam and Eve, who want to reason God down to our size. We probably thought we knew what these texts meant until Jeff got up here and started talking, and now we're confused again. I had this all nailed down at once, right? This isn't Pastor Jeff's thing, although I enjoy watching people squirm sometimes in the seats. This is a God thing. Yeah, see, that's my third laugh already in 5 minutes. 4, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Ray. God wants us to want God more than our understanding of God. And that's the beginning piece here. That God doesn't fit into the box of humanity. God is complex, and God is large. And God is reflected in the humanity of both male and female. And God is an usness. So this is where we start. This is the image that we're created in. This is the place that we come from. And what's really outstanding as we continue to work with this, it takes all of us to reflect God's image. Not just the part of the parts we like. The second thing I want to talk about this morning is our created intention. Now, our image explores the necessity of gender in creation. Our created intention explores the application of gender. So we're going to talk now about males and females. We're not going to do the birds and the bees. I don't want you to squirm in your seats that much. I just want you to just get a sense of this. So a couple of things about this is our created intention. A couple of things about males. And males must understand their limits. Men must understand that males, men, guys, must understand their limits. I love this. Verse 18, the Lord said, "It is not good for a man to be alone." Most of the women in here today knew that without any theological study at all. Okay? So you sisters, you already knew that you leave hubby alone. That's why there's always a list on the refrigerator when you're not there. You see, there's got to, God says from the very get-go, it is not good for a man to be alone. Wow. I will make a suitable helper. Now, I want you to circle that word because that's going to be the key word down the road. A suitable helper for him. And then after the creation of the beast and everything, it says, but for Adam, there was no suitable helper. You see, in the created order, this isn't the fallen order. In the created order of things, males are to know their limits. And so if you go back to verse 7, which I didn't go back to read, I don't go back to the whole text again. Males were created out of the dust of the earth. They were created, they were taken from something that is not eternal. They were taken from something that had its limits. You can only do so much with dust. You know? We get creative a little bit, but you can't do a lot with dust. Okay? If you get enough dust, then this is going to be fun, isn't it? You guys thought you were in for it. We're just going to have a good time this morning. You get enough dust and you have some soil, and then maybe you can grow some corn or something. Something useful will come out of this. But there's this whole sense of limitation in the created order of man. Okay, now the ladies have been laughing a lot up till now, and so I just thought it would be nice to, because the text has it right here. Females must understand their capacity. Wow. Oh. Females must understand their capacity. There's one other, well, we'll get there, but let's look at the word helper, okay? This is a very dynamic and fluid word. This word helper, even though it has been worked into our culture, is less Donna Reed or June Cleaver, to use my generation, and is much more godly. This whole idea of helper is not about doing the dirty work, picking things up, cooking, doing the dishes, all with a nice dress and a string of pearls around her neck. This is actually the word that is an exalted position where one would call upon the helper God. That's exactly where this word help in the power of God, one who calls upon God in a time of distress and desperation. So check this out. So you've got men, not good to be alone, knowing their limits, and you've got women that need to know the amount of their capacity, because together something powerful can happen. But let me go back to this word. I may leave a few of you unconvinced about this word, but if you go back to the Hebrew and read this word, izer, to help in the power of God. It gets even more powerful if you take this word throughout the whole Old Testament. And since we're so close to having come through Easter, let me take this back to, just write this in your notes somewhere today. Psalms 22. Psalms 22 is a portrait of the crucifixion of Jesus thousands of years before he was crucified. I mean, the detail in Psalms 22, I know I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. The detail in Psalms 22 about the crucifixion of a man thousands of years before they were crucifying men is simply amazing. That Jesus on the cross would quote from Psalms 22 is the putting of that together. And when Jesus says from the cross in this prophetic sense, verse 19 of Psalms 22, "But you, O Lord, are not far off. O my strength, come quickly to help me, to ezer me." The writer of Psalms 22 is saying this in this time of great pain that they're in, even though it's prophetic of Jesus coming 1,000 years later, is, "O God, come to my aid and my power and my assistance, as you created from the very beginning that a female would come to a male and help him." Wow. You see, what's going on here is something very powerful. Men were created to ask for help, and women were created to offer help. And both of those things are fraught with humility. It is very difficult to ask for help. And conversely, it is very difficult to offer help even when you know help is needed. How many times, male or female, have you said to yourself, "Well, I'd ask them for help, but they're useless"? Or, "I would offer them some help right now, but they're fit to be tied." And the created order understands this. I want to remind you that this is pre-chapter 3. This is before the fall. We were made incomplete. Our perfection is not in our completeness. Our perfection is not in our independence. How many times have you told yourself this as a Christian? I should be able to do this by now. Maybe not. Maybe none of us are to do anything on our own, but only in connection with another, and only in trusting God. How many of us as Christians long to do the things of and for God by myself? So Eve walks through the garden in the day, and the tempter says in the voice of the snake, "Take an apple. You won't have to consult with God anymore." Boy, doesn't that feel good? You mean I could do it myself? And not bother God? God's pretty busy. God brings a new sense of who we are. And notice, until chapter 3, there is no discussion about who's the best, who's the boss, who's better, who's most. Gender is simply gender, everything taken unto its created order, working in true and right fashion. This is how God designs it. That dispute, that argument happens after chapter 3. Males and females must be partners, not competitors. Males, and I'm not even talking about marriage yet, by the way, okay? I'll get myself out of trouble here in just a minute. But this is just the created order as God has given it to us. So the third thing I want to talk about then is our created identity and marriage. So let me say this from the get-go. marriage is not necessarily the preferred order. You may think that after I've said all that, how can you do that without being married to someone? There's the other end of my bookend. Well, not so fast. The New Testament offers to many, in a handful of passages, what the New Testament calls the gift of celibacy. Okay? Now, I have met very few 20-year-olds that ever prayed for the gift of celibacy. However, I haven't even got to the punchline to this yet. You guys are just in a laughing mood. However, I've met a number of 40-somethings who wish they had. Okay, well, we got that now, all right? You see, what God is talking about here is that we must work together as males and females, and we must not drive the wedge, whether you're married or not. God had in course and time this bringing of people together fit to do the work of God, fit to reflect the image of God to the rest of the world. Not, oh, this gender really reflects the image of God, and this gender, either side of the argument, wherever you want to go on this now, this gender is an afterthought. Or, well, you're only really complete unless you're married. This doesn't seem to work with this text either. However, God is willing to talk about marriage because that was His plan for Adam and Eve. Okay? And so we want to go there. I also want to, this whole idea of woman being taken out of man also cuts two ways back to the original point. And the first is this, that being taken out of man is once again a parable of man not being complete in and of himself, and woman not being complete in and of herself. And to be taken out of each other harkens back to the same stuff. They're all taken out of dust. And that's what's going on in that passage. We were made for unity. We were not made for superiority. We were made as a people to somehow bring a unity of the reflection of God as male and female, whether we get married or not at all. I'm saving the marriage stuff for just the last 5 minutes of the sermon. So He does then come to marriage. And He says, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. Wow. Okay. Now in the marriage thing, we really get close to this image of completion. So marriage should reflect that. Not that everyone should be married, but if you're going to do the marriage thing, that's the reflection. I love the King James because it uses some really great words here. It says, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So there's two things going on in a marriage that reflects the glory of God. And the first is our leavings. We must be people that are constant leaving our past persons, past positions, past expectations, past assumptions. So if you come next weekend, we're going to be talking about, I haven't even seen any of this information, but just from what I've got from the trailers, new starts. See, if you're still holding whatever you're holding over or expecting that that's how they're going to act tomorrow, you're not leaving anything. And you're not working on your marriage. If you're married and you've already got them set up as to how they'll act tomorrow or under the same set of circumstances, then you're outside of what God would say in terms of learning to leave what must be left every time. if we keep that scorecard, they will amazingly fit your disturbing and twisted expectation of them. And there is no hope. Because on the fat chance that they get it right, you'll say to yourself, that was a blip on the radar. Let's see if they can do it again. What is to survive under those kind of relational expectations? What possible good could come out of that? If men are not free to seek help and ask for help, and women are not free to offer help as designed by God. All the assumptions and expectations must be left behind. Everything you thought you knew about this mysterious spouse. And this is why God is so mysterious. The person you're married to, if you're married today, is indeed mysterious. And you don't have them down yet. The second is cleaving. And there's two words for cleave. One would be to get out that big thing and, cleave it. Okay? That's not what we're talking about here. The cleaving that I often refer to and did yesterday afternoon is to be standing on the platform with two people getting married, and they're holding their hands so tightly that I haven't seen blood from below their elbow in the last 20 minutes because they're cleaving to one another. And I often will remind them, that's it. What's it? Is there a spider crawling up? What? To hold tightly to one another. To cleave to that and to be done with this fierce independence. Well, I'm married, but I can do it myself. Or I'm married and we could do it better if he would only listen. You see how that... Hang in there, Tina. Scott, yeah, right. We'll give him a bad time too. Yeah, you're both. Yeah, you get elbowitis. We do get. There's often bruised ribs after a sermon like this. But what I really, really like about this passage is, in just kind of a twisted biblical theological way, is verse 25. And I'm glad we're at least a little bit liberated these days. Most people don't even want to talk about this. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. You see, knowing what they now knew, and this is pre-chapter 3, and we don't know how long it took them to get to chapter 3. I know you guys are going to go home today and read Genesis 1, 2, and 3. I think you are. Don't know how they got there or how long it took them. But this passage is saying that when man was free to ask for help and woman was free to offer help, they became vulnerable and transparent. They became capable and uncapable. They became teachable. They became laughable. They became sorrowable. They became successful. They became workable. They became eternal in God's eyes. And all of that vulnerability, they weren't ashamed. They picked it up. They understood their place in the creation. And it was good. We're so concerned that we're going to be found out or found wanting or found that we can't keep up, that we start to mask everything, even our most intimate relations. They couldn't handle it. You can't handle the truth, right? I wonder when we make that statement if that's really something that's echoing off the wall and meant for our own ears. The only truth that we can handle is the truth that we ourselves would be willing to accept. So this morning, our application is our communion with God. Can we become people who quit trying to be who we think we must be in some kind of twisted way, because we've not only have we gotten our instructions from the world, we've gotten our instructions from a kind of twisted view from the church itself. And now you're looking at the text. What say you? Let God redeem you. Let God forgive you. Let God transform you. It doesn't begin with your partner, and it never will. It begins with you. Sadly enough, it doesn't begin. This is the key to all relationships right here. It doesn't begin with your noisy neighbors. It begins with you. It never begins with your children. It begins with you. It doesn't begin with the person that you just can't seem to get. It begins with where you are. Can you give yourself to God and say, oh God, I've got all these relational problems. I'm going to quit praying about them in some kind of big way. And I'm going to say, God, if there's anything that can be done about all the relationships in my life, would you please begin with me? Would you begin to show me what it is about how I was made and how I could begin to make that the part that I need to be involved in?